Right, let's get one thing straight. If medieval education was the drunk uncle at the party, brutal, embarrassing, but strangely effective, the Industrial Revolution was more like that passive-aggressive boss who quietly ruins your life, one standardized form at a time. Welcome to education as an assembly line. Boring, repetitive, and about as intellectually stimulating as a flat pint of beer. See, the Industrial Revolution wasn't just steam engines and child labor, though admittedly there was plenty of that. It turned education into another kind of machinery, lifeless, standardized, and built to churn out obedient little cogs rather than curious minds. Imagine trading majestic Gothic cathedrals for educational factories. Less Notre Dame, more Notre Dame. Schools stopped being places where people learned to think. Instead, they became glorified production lines. Teachers weren't educators anymore, they were supervisors, ensuring everyone knew exactly the same tedious rubbish. It's as if someone looked at factories belching smoke and misery and thought, you know what? We should do that with kids. Brilliant idea, that. Curriculums were dictated not by curiosity, but by the cold, dead hand of standardization. Teachers didn't guide students, they supervised them. Their worth was judged not by how deeply students understood the world, but by how many bland, identical answers they could regurgitate. Modern research shows this approach didn't create brilliant minds. It created bored zombies who could barely pretend to care. Koretz, 2008. And oh boy, the monotony. Today, when students complain that class is boring, they have no clue. Industrial-era students didn't just face boredom, they lived it, breathed it, memorized it, and probably got beaten if they forgot it. Schools became places where curiosity went to die slowly and painfully. Any student daring to ask questions or show original thought was swiftly smacked down for causing trouble, like asking the foreman for a tea break after a 16-hour shift. Think about this. The entire system wasn't broken. It was deliberately designed to crush creativity, innovation, critical thinking. Nah, mate. Just follow instructions, keep your head down, and don't jam up the conveyor belt. Standardization was education's big lie. It promised fairness but delivered mediocrity wrapped neatly in bureaucratic nonsense. If you deviated from the script, congratulations, you were officially a failure. Individuality was about as welcome as a clown at a funeral. Students quickly learned to keep their heads down, not because they loved learning, but because standing out meant getting hammered down harder. This system churned out plenty of obedient office drones and dutiful factory workers, sure, but critical thinkers, visionaries? Nope. Those were exactly the sort of dangerous weirdo schools tried to avoid. Because God forbid someone starts thinking for themselves and messes up productivity. And let's not forget the real reason behind this joyless grind. It was never about genuine learning. It was about training kids to become compliant, mind-numbingly efficient workers. School wasn't education, it was employee training for future factory shifts. Teachers too got dragged into this nightmare, becoming little more than human cogs themselves, demoralized, repetitive, and stripped of any creative spark they might once have had. Anyone daring to rock the boat was politely or impolitely reminded to shut up and keep stamping out those identical little widgets. So what's the grim takeaway from all this historical doom and gloom? Well, while factories churned out shoes and widgets, schools churned out obedient little yes-men who wouldn't dream of questioning the system. Unfortunately, even though our current world screams for innovation, creativity, and critical thought, too many schools still operate like it's 1850. Standardized tests, monotonous lessons, and zero tolerance for true curiosity. Ironically, the Industrial Revolution's educational system remains weirdly influential, despite being spectacularly unsuited to today's complex, rapidly changing world. We're still forcing students through the same cookie-cutter approach, wondering why they emerge bored, disengaged, and utterly unable to think critically. Here's a revolutionary idea, pun fully intended. How about we stop treating students like interchangeable factory parts and start treating them like human beings capable of real thought? Imagine a classroom where originality isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated. Imagine an education system genuinely preparing students for the future, not just teaching them to tolerate mindless repetition. It's not rocket science, folks. If you want thinkers, innovators, and leaders, stop teaching as if every kid is destined for life on the factory floor. Let's leave standardization where it belongs, in manufacturing. Education deserves creativity, curiosity, and critical thinking. Unless we genuinely prefer a future populated by uninspired drones capable only of blindly pushing buttons. It's time to dismantle the assembly line, folks. After all, education isn't supposed to be about making identical products. It's about nurturing unique minds, and honestly, isn't that the whole bloody point?